Hidden behind red brick walls built in 1536 is a London palace where Anne Boleyn's initials are still carved into the fireplaces, where queens were crowned, where treaties were signed, and where Princess Anne maintains her official residence today. But this Tudor masterpiece holds a darker history, one tied to betrayal, execution, and centuries of royal secrets. Inside this palace, Henry VIII's ghost still lingers, and Princess Anne lives in the shadows of that legacy. If you want to understand how Britain's royal family really operates, how they balance history with the modern world, and why Princess Anne is nothing like what the tabloids tell you, then stick around, because we're about to take you inside the old money mansions of the Princess Royal. And make sure you subscribe, because we're covering stories about royal properties that nobody else is talking about. Let's start with the most senior palace in the entire United Kingdom. We're talking about St. James's Palace. When you hear the name St. James's, most people think of Buckingham Palace because they know that's where the royals live. But they're wrong. St. James's Palace is the most senior. It's the ceremonial heart of the monarchy, and it's where Princess Anne maintains her official London residence today. The story of St. James's Palace begins with King Henry VIII in the 1530s. Henry was obsessed with power, with legacy, and with having a son. He had just married Anne Boleyn, and he was absolutely convinced that she would give him the heir he desperately wanted. To celebrate this new marriage and this new hope for the future, Henry decided to build a hunting lodge. He purchased land near St. James's Park, and in 1531 he began construction on what would become one of the most historically significant buildings in British history. The site itself was controversial to many. It was built on the grounds of a leper hospital, a place of isolation and disease. But that's exactly why Henry wanted it there. Royal children needed to be isolated, protected from the germs and infections that killed so many infants during that era. Infant mortality during the Renaissance was catastrophic. Families lost children to measles, to smallpox, to infections that we can cure with antibiotics today. So Henry cleared the hospital, commissioned workers, and built an entirely new residence in red brick and stone, a fortress really, designed to keep his future heir safe from the world outside. The palace was constructed between 1531 and 1536. Red brick was the fashionable material of the time, and the designers chose to include 4 separate courtyards, a chapel, multiple lodging suites, and extensive kitchens. What was unusual about this palace was that there was no great hall. Henry specifically designed it that way to restrict access to the royal children. Every room was meant to be functional, secure, and controlled. The gatehouse still stands today, a 4-story structure with crenellated octagonal towers at its corners and a clock that dominates the uppermost floor. The gatehouse is the most recognizable feature of St. James's Palace, the part that tourists photograph when they walk down Pall Mall. And if you look closely at some of the Tudor fireplaces inside the palace, you'll still see the initials H and A carved into them. H for Henry, and A for Anne Boleyn. These initials were carefully carved by craftsmen designed to immortalize a love that would be cut short by tragedy. But here's where the story takes a dark turn. Anne Boleyn never saw St. James's Palace completed. She was executed in 1536, just before the palace finished construction. The charges against her were treason and adultery. Historians debate the accuracy of those charges to this day, and many believe they were fabricated, designed to remove a queen who had failed to give Henry a son. Anne had promised Henry a male heir. She had convinced him to break with the Catholic Church of Rome. She had promised him everything he wanted. But she delivered a daughter, Elizabeth, who would one day become one of England's greatest monarchs. But at the time, she was just proof that Anne Boleyn could not deliver what Henry wanted most. So she was arrested, tried in a court stacked against her, and executed by sword on the 19th of May, 1536. She was 29 years old. Her ladies-in-waiting reportedly wept as she walked to her execution. She faced her death with dignity and courage, but she would never know that her daughter would become a great queen, would never know that St. James's Palace would still carry her initials centuries later. The son Henry was so desperate for, the heir that drove him to build this magnificent fortress, never came. It was one of history's cruelest ironies. The palace built for a prince who would never exist, built because of a queen who would lose her head. Even after her death, Anne Boleyn's presence lingered in those walls like a ghost. Henry would later marry Anne of Cleves, and when she became queen, workers updated the ceiling decorations in the Chapel Royal. They added her coat of arms, her initials. But interestingly, Anne of Cleves and Anne Boleyn shared the same first initial, so historians believe some of those decorations may have originally been intended for Anne Boleyn. The palace kept its secrets. It kept the memory of a woman who was erased from history but whose initials remained carved into Tudor fireplaces, waiting for someone centuries later to rediscover them and remember her name. For nearly 3 centuries, St. James' Palace remained important but secondary to other royal residences. Kings and queens used it. but it wasn't their primary home. Elizabeth I, the daughter of Anne Boleyn, stayed there regularly. She was actually residing at the palace in 1588 when England faced the threat of the Spanish Armada. Imagine being in that palace, knowing that enemy ships were approaching, knowing that your country's survival hung in the balance. Elizabeth reportedly spent a sleepless night at St. James's Palace during that crisis, concerned about her country, about her people, about whether the naval forces under her command would be able to defeat the Spanish fleet. She wrote letters, she prayed, she worried, but England's ships prevailed. The Armada was defeated, and Elizabeth lived to rule England for another 15 years. She had lived in this palace her entire life. It was familiar ground for her. Mary I, Elizabeth's half-sister, signed the treaty that surrendered Calais at this palace in 1558, a humiliation that would mark her reign. Calais had been in English territory for over 200 years. Losing it was a shock. Mary was devastated. She said that when she died, they would find the word Calais written on her heart, and she died later that same year. Charles II and James II were both born here and baptized here. The palace was a birthplace for kings. Multiple monarchs made their marks on this building, left their imprints on its walls, added their own stories to its rich and complicated history. Then came the fire of 1698. The Palace of Whitehall, which had been the main royal residence, burned down completely. It was a catastrophic loss. Whitehall had been the center of royal power for centuries, and suddenly it was gone, consumed by flames. The fire spread quickly through the wooden structures. It destroyed the monarch's private apartments. It destroyed the staterooms. It destroyed everything. When the smoke cleared, only the banqueting hall remained standing. Suddenly, St. James's Palace became the principal residence of the monarchy. Every monarch from that point until William IV used St. James as their home in London. George I lived there. George II lived there. They governed the British Empire from St. James's Palace. They held court there. They entertained foreign dignitaries there, and when Queen Victoria moved into Buckingham Palace in 1837, St. James's never fully lost its importance. It retained its ceremonial significance. It was redesigned. It was updated. In 1834, the clock on the gatehouse was refurbished. The state apartments were enlarged and decorated. New wings were added. But the core Tudor structure remained, a living link to Henry VIII's ambitions and his tragedies. By the time the 20th century arrived, St. James Palace was no longer the primary royal residence, but it maintained its status as the official seat of the royal court. When new ambassadors arrive in Britain, they are still accredited to the court of St. James's. This is a ceremonial formality that dates back centuries, but it matters. It means that St. James's Palace is still the official center of royal authority in Britain. When a new monarch is proclaimed, it's at St. James's Palace where the Accession Council meets. This is a formal ceremony where the government and the parliament confirm that the new monarch has the throne. In 2022, when King Charles III was proclaimed king following the death of Queen Elizabeth II, it happened at St. James's Palace, and for the first time in history, the ceremony was televised. Millions of people watched as Charles was officially declared king in a room that had witnessed centuries of such ceremonies. Princess Anne has maintained her official London residence at St. James's Palace for decades. It's where she works when she's in London. She uses the palace for state visits, for ceremonial occasions, for charity events, for official functions. She has her apartment there, though very little is known about what it looks like or how she's decorated it. What we do know is that it's functional. It's no frills. Her sitting room, based on what people have glimpsed, is probably more like her sitting room at Gatcombe Park than like some of the grand state rooms in Buckingham Palace. Princess Anne has never been one to care about displaying wealth or status. She cares about utility. She cares about comfort. She cares about being surrounded by the people and things she loves. That preference is reflected in how she maintains her apartments at St. James's Palace. When Princess Anne needs to attend events in London, when she needs to conduct official business, when she needs to be visible as a member of the royal family, she uses St. James's Palace as her base. She has a staff there. She has offices. She can meet with dignitaries, host receptions, conduct the business of being a senior member of the British royal family. But at the end of the day, when the events are finished, when the ceremonies are complete, she doesn't stay there if she doesn't have to. She goes home. And home is not in London. Home is not in a palace, surrounded by centuries of history and weight and expectation. Home is in the countryside. Home is Gatcombe Park. Gatcombe Park is everything that St. James's Palace is not. Where St. James's is trapped in the past, surrounded by the urban sprawl of London, Gatcombe is modern, rural, and utterly private. The estate sprawls across 730 acres of Gloucestershire countryside. 730 acres. That's over 1,000 football fields. That's a vast expanse of land with forests, fields, and pastoral beauty. It includes lakes, woodland, fields, stables, and multiple properties. At the heart of it sits the main house, a Grade II listed Georgian manor built between 1771 and 1774. The original builder was Edward Shepherd, a cloth merchant who had made his fortune in the textile trade. This was typical of the Georgian period. Wealthy merchants and businessmen were building country estates to display their wealth and their status. They were moving away from London, buying land, creating these private kingdoms in the countryside. Shepherd was one of these men. He had money. He had ambition. He wanted to build something that would reflect his success and prosperity, and Gatcombe Park was the result of his vision. He wanted to create a legacy for his family, a place that would stand for centuries. The house itself is built in cream bath stone, a pale limestone that gives it a soft, elegant appearance. Bath stone came from quarries near the city of Bath, and it was favored by the wealthiest landowners because it looked beautiful and it lasted for centuries. The stone is warm in color, almost golden in the right light. It's not the cold gray of granite or the harsh red of brick. It's inviting and elegant. The house features the symmetrical facade typical of Georgian architecture. Large sash windows let in light. There's a Doric porch that serves as the principal entrance. The architecture is restrained, elegant, refined. This was not a palace trying to impress. It was a country house designed for comfort and for living. You could actually see yourself walking up to this house, actually see yourself living in it. It wasn't designed to intimidate. It was designed to welcome. The proportions are perfect. The windows are large and well placed. The entrance draws you in. But the real transformation happened around 1820. An architect named George Besevi, who trained under John Soane, one of the greatest architects of the era, was hired to remodel and enlarge the house. Besevi understood classical architecture. He understood balance and proportion. He understood how to add to a building without destroying what was already there. He added single-story wings flanking the main block, creating a more expansive and impressive facade. He added a curving conservatory that extends westward from the west wing and connects to a summer house. This conservatory was a marvel of Georgian engineering, featuring curved glass and elegant stonework. He added the Doric porch. He designed a polygonal stable block and a coach house, structures that complemented the main house while serving practical purposes. His neoclassical additions enhanced the original fabric without overwhelming it. The house went from being a successful merchant's country retreat to being something that looked like the seat of a powerful family. And that's exactly what it was about to become. The estate changed hands several times over the next century and a half. It passed from the Shepherds to a man named David Ricardo, a political economist and member of parliament who had made a fortune on the stock exchange. Ricardo was famous for his economic theories. He wrote treatises on political economy that are still studied in universities today. He understood the principles of comparative advantage and differential rent. He was the kind of man who understood money at a theoretical level, who could see how systems worked, how markets functioned, how wealth was created and distributed. He was also a practical man who understood that land was the ultimate form of wealth and power in Georgian England. He lived at Gatcombe Park, surrounded by his acres, and he implemented agricultural reforms that made the estate productive and valuable. He added acres to the property through careful purchases. He managed it like a businessman. He was preserving something, but he was also improving it. He was making it work. He left his mark on Gatcombe Park. The estate remained in the Ricardo family until 1937. By that time, the British landscape was changing. World War II was approaching. The old aristocratic systems were beginning to shift. The Ricardos, like many aristocratic families, decided to sell. Then it passed to Samuel Courtauld, a wealthy industrialist from a family that had made its fortune in textiles and art collection. Courtauld was a serious collector. He supported artists. He donated works to museums. He was the kind of wealthy patron who used his money to support culture and beauty. And then it passed to Rab Butler, a conservative politician who served as Home Secretary. Butler was a serious statesman. He was involved in major policy decisions. He had influence and power, but when he lived at Gatcombe Park, he seemed to value it as a retreat, a place to step away from the intensity of political life. Butler lived at Gatcombe Park during the 1950s and 60s. He entertained there. He hosted dinners for Cambridge dons, for fellow parliamentarians, for equestrian enthusiasts. The estate became known as a place of understated cultural and political entertaining. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't meant to impress. It was meant to be a genuine place where interesting people could gather, where ideas could be discussed, where friendships could develop. The house functioned, as Butler intended it to function, as a place of real living and real human connection. But even Butler, despite his prominence, was really just a caretaker of this land. He was keeping it safe, preserving it, maintaining it, until the day it would pass to someone who would truly make her mark on it and transform it into something even more meaningful. That day came in 1976. Queen Elizabeth II, Princess Anne's mother, purchased Gatcombe Park from Rab Butler as a wedding present for her daughter. Princess Anne had married Captain Mark Phillips, a cavalry officer and an accomplished equestrian. The couple was young, in love, and the Queen wanted to give them something extraordinary. It wasn't just any house. It was a statement. It was saying that the Queen believed in this marriage, that she was investing in this couple's future, that she wanted them to have a place where they could build their life together. The Crown purchased the estate, and then the Crown invested in renovations. The house was updated, modern systems were installed, the heating was improved, the plumbing was modernized, the estate was prepared for the princess and her new husband. They were ready for something new to begin. When Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips moved into Gatcombe Park in 1977, they weren't just moving into a house. They were stepping into centuries of history. They were inheriting not just property, but a responsibility. The estate was 700 acres of working farmland. It had agricultural operations. It had horse breeding facilities. It had traditions that stretched back to the days of the cloth merchants of Gloucestershire. It had been shaped by centuries of use and care. And Princess Anne, with her love of horses, her practical nature, and her no-nonsense approach to life, was exactly the kind of person to maintain and preserve this legacy while also making it her own. The main house at Gatcombe Park is remarkable for what it reveals about how royals actually live when nobody's watching. It's a Grade II listed building with 9 bedrooms. Downstairs there are 4 reception rooms, a billiards room, a library, a conservatory. The house is substantial, impressive, but it's designed for living, not for showing off. The house was built for a family. It was meant to accommodate not just the immediate family, but also guests and extended family members and servants. The rooms are arranged in a logical way. The private spaces are separate from the public spaces. The kitchen is positioned to serve the dining rooms efficiently. This is a house built by people who understood how to run a household, how to make things work. The interiors remain largely private, but the glimpses we've gotten suggest something quite different from what people imagine when they think of royal homes. The furniture is comfortable. It's worn in places from actual use. There are family photographs everywhere, paintings, books, trinkets collected over decades. It's the kind of house where you could actually feel at home. It's the kind of house where children could run around without worrying about breaking priceless antiques. It's the kind of house where people eat on trays in the living room instead of sitting at a formal dining table, because that's more comfortable and more real and more human. During the COVID lockdown in 2020, photographs emerged of Princess Anne sitting in her living room at Gatcombe Park. She was watching the Six Nations rugby match, a sport she follows with genuine interest. Mike Tyndall, her son-in-law and a professional rugby player, appeared in the photos with her. The photographs showed a large but cozy living room. There was a floral sofa and armchair, the kind of furniture that looks expensive but not ostentatious. There was wood furniture, old and well-used, and the walls featured bold lime green curtains. These weren't subtle curtains. They were a statement. They were bright and bold, the kind of thing that a designer would tell you not to do. But Princess Anne did it anyway because she liked it and because she doesn't care what anyone else thinks. When those photographs appeared on social media, people responded with a kind of shock and delight. This was what a royal home actually looked like. It looked like anyone's grandmother's house. It looked normal. It looked lived in. It looked like a place where actual humans lived their actual lives. The living room even had a photograph of Princess Anne with her brother, King Charles, displayed prominently. Not a formal portrait, just a family photograph. It was a family room, not a stateroom. Not a formal display of wealth and power, but a genuine family space where the Princess Royal and her husband sit to watch television, to relax, to be themselves away from the public eye. This is what mattered to Princess Anne about Gatcombe Park. It was a place where she could be herself. It was a place where she didn't have to perform or maintain appearances or pretend to be something she wasn't. But Gatcombe Park is much more than just a house. It's an ecosystem. It's a working estate. The 730 acres include multiple properties where Princess Anne's children and grandchildren live. Her son, Peter Phillips, and his wife initially lived in a cottage on the estate. Her daughter, Zara Tyndall, and her husband, Mike Tyndall, now live in Aston Farm, a property that sits within the broader Gatcombe estate. They raised their 3 children there on the land, surrounded by horses and countryside. One of their children, Lucas, was actually born at Aston Farm in an unexpected home birth. It was quick, faster than anyone expected. Mike Tyndall has spoken about it on his rugby podcast, describing how he had to grab some yoga mats and call for a midwife because things moved so fast. It wasn't an emergency, but it was urgent, and it happened at home. It happened on the estate, in the family property. It's the kind of story that shows how Gatcombe Park functions as a genuine family home. Not just a residence, but a place where life happens, where babies are born, where memories are made. The estate has stables, serious stables, not just a few horses, but facilities that support professional equestrian training and competition. This is because Princess Anne is a genuine equestrian. She competed in the Olympic Games in 1976. She's an accomplished rider. And more than that, she has a deep commitment to equestrian sports and to preserving horse breeding traditions. The stables at Gatcombe Park are state-of-the-art facilities. They house thoroughbred horses. They support breeding programs. They are maintained at the highest standards. This is not a casual hobby. This is a serious commitment to an ancient art and sport. The estate hosts equestrian events. For years, it hosted the Festival of British Eventing, one of the most prestigious horse trials in the world. This wasn't just a local event. Top equestrian competitors from around the globe would come to Gatcombe Park to compete. It was a 3-day event featuring dressage, cross-country, and show jumping. 40,000 paying spectators would show you. Peak spectators would arrive from all over Britain and Europe. It was a major event in the equestrian calendar. The event drew competitors at the Olympic level. It was organized by Mark Phillips, Princess Anne's ex-husband, with considerable input from Princess Anne herself. They worked together on this project, even after their divorce, because they both understood how important this event was for the equestrian community. The Festival of British Eventing at Gatcombe Park became legendary. It became the event that every serious eventer wanted to compete in. It put Gatcombe Park on the international equestrian map. Beyond the main house and the equestrian facilities, there's something that might surprise people. There's a party barn. Yes, you read that right. A barn that's been converted into an entertainment space. It has a bar. It has catering facilities. It has a giant screen for watching sports or movies. It has lounge areas and comfortable seating. It features vaulted ceilings, wooden beams, and chic paneling. This isn't some rustic old barn. It's been thoughtfully renovated and designed. It's beautiful. It's functional. It's the kind of space where you could host a wedding reception or a birthday party or a family gathering. When Zara and Mike Tyndall did an interview with Vogue Australia in 2022, they mentioned the party barn. They described it as a space where the family gathers, where they entertain, where they celebrate. And then there's the working farm aspect. Gatcombe Park isn't just an estate for pleasure. It's a working farm. It has livestock. It has agricultural operations. It's maintained as a functioning enterprise. Crops are grown. Animals are raised. The land is actively managed. The grounds are used for events, for craft fairs, for various activities. It's not some museum frozen in time. It's a living, breathing place where work happens, where horses are bred, where the land is actively managed and used to produce income and value. This is a different approach from how many royal estates are run. When Queen Elizabeth II purchased Gatcombe Park for her daughter, she paid somewhere between £500,000 and £750,000. That was the purchase price in 1976. Today, the estate is worth in excess of £6 million. The appreciation is extraordinary, but it's not just about money. It's about the fact that this is land that works. When you understand both of these places, you understand Princess Anne. She's not the caricature that gets presented in tabloids. She's someone who has figured out how to live a life that's meaningful to her while also serving a role that's important to the crown. She's found a way to be both formal and casual, both traditional and unconventional, both private and public. That's the real story of Princess Anne's old money mansions. It's about how she uses these spaces to live authentically within a system that wasn't necessarily designed for authenticity. It's about someone who refuses to be limited by her circumstances. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories about the British royal family. The contrast between these two properties is stark and intentional. St. James's Palace represents duty, history, and the weight of centuries of tradition. Every brick, every stone, every window tells a story of power and governance. The palace has witnessed the rise and fall of empires. It has been the setting for state dinners that shaped the course of nations. It has been the backdrop for ceremonies that established the order of succession. It has seen ambassadors accredited, treaties signed, and the fate of nations decided. When Princess Anne enters St. James's Palace, she's not just entering a building. She's entering a living monument to British history. She's walking in the footsteps of Henry VIII, of Elizabeth I, of countless monarchs and princes and queens. The palace demands something of her. It demands formality. It demands dignity. It demands that she represent not just herself, but an institution that stretches back over 500 years. This is the obligation of St. James's Palace. Gatcombe Park, by contrast, demands nothing except authenticity. It asks Princess Anne to be herself. It gives her permission to wear lime green curtains if she wants to. It gives her permission to eat on trays in front of the television. It gives her permission to be human in a world that often expects her to be a symbol. Gatcombe Park is a refuge. It's a place where the Princess Royal can be just Anne, a woman with horses and family and a life that belongs to her. The estate supports this vision. Every aspect of it is designed for living, not for display. The party barn exists so that family members can celebrate together. The working farm exists so that the land is productive. The stables exist because Princess Anne genuinely loves horses and riding. Everything at Gatcombe Park has a purpose beyond mere ornament. This is the genius of how Princess Anne has arranged her life. She has not rejected either the institution or the person. She has not chosen between being a royal and being herself. Instead, she has created a structure that allows her to be both. She conducts her official business in London at St. James's Palace. She performs her role as a senior member of the royal family. She attends ceremonies and state occasions and hosts receptions for foreign dignitaries. But then she comes home to Gatcombe Park, where she can live according to her own values and her own choices. And this is what makes Princess Anne different from many other members of the royal family. She has maintained her integrity throughout her life. She has refused to be molded into someone she's not. She has insisted on being practical when others wanted ceremony. She has insisted on being direct when others wanted artifice. She has driven heavy goods vehicles. She has eaten tinned pies. She has installed lime green curtains. She has done things her way, always, throughout her entire life. Princess Anne was born in 1950. She's 75 years old now. She's been a member of the royal family her whole life. She's watched the institution change. She's watched the world change. But she has remained constant. She has remained true to her values. She has remained committed to her family and her horses and her work. She has lived a life that is authentic and meaningful, despite the constraints of being born into privilege and duty. The way she manages Gatcombe Park reflects this commitment to authenticity. The estate is not preserved as a museum. It's not frozen in time. It's a working farm. It's a family home. It's a place where life happens. It's a place where children are born and play and grow up. It's a place where people gather and celebrate. It's a place where work gets done. This is how Princess Anne has chosen to live her private life, with purpose, with productivity, with authenticity. And when you stand at Gatcombe Park and look across the 730 acres, you're looking at a physical manifestation of Princess Anne's values. You're looking at land that works. You're looking at a home that's lived in. You're looking at a place where family comes first. You're looking at an estate that's maintained for utility and beauty, not for show. This is what matters to Princess Anne. This is what she values. This is what she has chosen. And this choice is important. In a world where the royal family is often seen as distant and formal and cut off from reality, Princess Anne has created an alternative model. She has shown that it's possible to be royal and still be real. It's possible to honor tradition and still embrace modernity. It's possible to live in a palace and still watch television. It's possible to be a princess and still be yourself. This is the message that her old money mansion send. This is the story that St. James's Palace and Gatcombe Park tell together. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the life and properties of Princess Anne. Subscribe for more documentaries about the British royal family and the untold stories behind the crown and the palaces. One thing that people often don't realize about Princess Anne is how hard she works. She's one of the hardest working members of the royal family. She attends more public engagements than almost any other royal. She supports over 300 charities and organizations. She conducts state visits. She opens buildings. She presents awards. She gives speeches. She's constantly busy, constantly working. And she's been doing this for over 50 years, since she was a young woman. Despite all of this work, despite all of these obligations, despite the weight of history and duty that comes with being the Princess Royal, Anne has maintained her commitment to Gatcombe Park and to the life she's built there. She balances it all. She manages to be both the dutiful princess and the authentic human being. She manages to honor her obligations to the crown while also honoring her obligations to herself and her family. This balance is what makes her story worth telling. This is what makes her old money mansions so interesting. Because these two properties represent the two sides of a life that could so easily have been split in half, could so easily have been broken into warring parts. But Princess Anne has managed to keep them together. She has managed to make them work as a unified whole. St. James's Palace will continue to be the official seat of the royal court. It will continue to host state ceremonies and diplomatic events. It will continue to be where ambassadors are accredited and new monarchs are proclaimed. It will stand as a testament to centuries of British history and power. And Princess Anne will continue to use it as her London base, her official residence, the place where she conducts her royal duties. Gatcombe Park will continue to be home. It will continue to host family gatherings and celebrations. It will continue to be a working farm and a working estate. It will continue to be the place where the Princess Royal comes to relax and be herself. It will stand as a testament to her values, to her commitment to authenticity, to her refusal to be limited by her circumstances. These are the old money mansions of Princess Anne. These are the properties that tell the real story of who she is. Not the tabloid version, not the caricature, but the real Princess Anne. A woman who has figured out how to live a life that is both dutiful and authentic. A woman who refuses to be limited by tradition while also refusing to abandon it. A woman who has created a life that works for her, on her terms, according to her values. That's the real story of Princess Anne's old money mansions. Princess Anne's story is important in today's world. In an era where authenticity is valued more than ever, where people are tired of performance and artifice, Princess Anne shows us that it's possible to navigate complex systems without losing yourself. She shows that you can have duty and integrity. You can have responsibility and authenticity. You can have obligations and freedom. The fact that she's maintained this balance for over 50 years is remarkable. The fact that she's done it while being one of the hardest working members of the royal family is even more remarkable. The fact that she's done it with grace and humor and without complaint is extraordinary. Princess Anne has never publicly complained about her responsibilities. She's never sought sympathy. She's never tried to escape her obligations, but she's also never let those obligations define her completely. She's maintained a private life. She's maintained her values. She's maintained her authenticity. This is the lesson of her mansions. This is the message that St. James's Palace and Gatcombe Park send together. It's possible to be many things at once. It's possible to be royal and real. It's possible to honor tradition and embrace authenticity. It's possible to live a meaningful life within a system that could have easily constrained and limited you. Subscribe now for more documentaries.